I have a guest today that I knew you needed to meet when I heard him speak at the Wounded Blue conference in Las Vegas. I mean, his ideas are innovative, but he presents them in such a way that really sucks you in, tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, and gives you so much to think about long after you've heard him speak. He's been a cop for 35 years. He's a police chief, he's a trainer, and he's an innovator. Chief Neil Gang, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Betsy. Is super blessed and excited to be with you today.
So you were Arizona law enforcement, and so talk about your whole career a little bit. 35 years is a long time. You've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I started up in New Jersey back in 1988. So I certainly have seen the changes and the swings in political environments over my 35 years. And I could definitely say that now is the season probably most difficult that I've ever seen in this profession. And I think now really is where good leadership is needed. And I think it's important to understand that depending on where you're actually serving, your environment's going to be different. So I went from New Jersey and then spent a decade down in South Florida, out in Broward County with the Pembroke Pines Police Department, and then left there and went to Surprise, Arizona, kind of where you're located at now. I spent 13 years there and then made the mistake, but actually ventured west and came into the Republic of California. And I've been the police chief here now for 10 years.
I got to tell you, I've had several California police chiefs as my guests, and it's a tough environment for a chief, but if you're a good leader, boy, people love you. And I know that your community really appreciates you, but it is a tough environment. And you said something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand about American law enforcement. It's a very regional situation, and that's by design, thanks to our Constitution. You as a voter, as an American, are supposed to have some control of your local law enforcement. So in theory, you elect people that are going to bring in the type of a law enforcement that you as the voter, you as a citizen want to see. And I know as a Chicago suburban police officer, when I moved out west here to Arizona, it's a very different atmosphere than in the Midwest. And I know California is very different, certainly than the East, than the South, that was Florida, and different than Arizona, right?
Yeah, I think you hit on a great point, and it's almost talks a little bit about the leadership now. It's almost like we're CEOs of a business. So you are a business. Policing is a business now, let's be honest. And the voters, like you said, have the opportunity to create the business that they want for their communities. They have the right to do that. They have the right to decide what type of policing and what type of police officers they have rolling in their community.
Now, Chief, every single cop in this country at one point in their career says, if I was chief, man, I'd fix this place. I'd do this and I do that. What the heck made you actually take that leap and become a police chief?
Well, I think you and I spoke about this when we were in person, but this was never my goal. I never wanted to become a police chief. In fact, I never had any aspirations of moving up rank at all. And I'll be politically correct with my verbiage here, but I think when you get tired of working for the a-holes, that you decide to promote over them. And that's your motivation, unfortunately, right? You have two choices, right? You could be part of the solution and part of the problem. And if I want to continue to complain about the poor leadership, then I had to do something about it. And someone challenged me one day, if you don't like the leadership that you're receiving, then do something about it and make a change. And that really kind of motivated me. And I kept promoting, basically because the leadership that I had wasn't satisfying my needs, nor do I think was satisfying the profession.
Now, you are, in addition to being a chief, you are also a trainer, and you're an excellent public speaker. I mean, you're just, and that's a tough. Most people don't like to speak before an audience, and so it's a gift, and you have that gift. Talk about your training in your public speaking.
I really, in fact, if you're going to say anything to me today that's going to hit me home, it's that, and because it doesn't come natural. I was deathly afraid of public speaking, but it really came, and I'm a man of faith, so I'll say it's a calling. It's a calling that I had due to a death of a buddy who died by suicide, Asher Rosinski, back in the 90s in South Florida. And nothing was happening and no one was talking about these things. And then, 20 years later, we're still seeing suicides and still no one's doing anything about it. And I prayed a lot about it. And I'll share a Bible verse with you that it kind of hits home, and it's Isaiah 6:8. It says, and I'll read it. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, send me."
Send
And that's
me.
exactly what this was. I needed to do something because the same way I was unhappy about the leadership, that I had to take a leadership role, the same thing. And that's what brought me in front of people to be able to speak. And I could tell you right now, before I step on that stage, I'm backstage sweating and I'm backstage saying a prayer that somehow the Lord speaks through me and I touch one person throughout my day speaking in front of them. Because honestly, it's a blessing to be able to have their time. And I want to make sure that they are spending time, that's time well spent for them to hear me.
It's funny you say that because, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of television and all that. And I am nervous. And I ask God every time, please be with me on this, because I want to represent my profession and of course my association. And you know what? People who say, "Oh, I'm never nervous," they're not very good. It's the good people that are, because those, and this is something I learned from my husband, those people that we speak to, they're our honor group, especially when people like you and I are speaking to a law enforcement audience. That's our honor group. What they think about us matters. And what you're doing with Asher's story is you have created, I mean, he already had a legacy as a good guy, but you have elevated his legacy to talk about police officer mental health and what we can do about it. Can you explain to people what you do in talking about your friend Asher?
Yeah, I think you hit a couple of points that I just want to touch on first. And one is that we care. And it's actually a privilege to be able to speak to others. It's a privilege. There's too many people out there speaking now that think it's their right and they're trying to make money and they're LinkedIn all-stars or whatever it may be. It's a privilege to speak to people. And here's the thing, when you're passionate about it, you care and you want to make sure you're impactful. And that's why I really enjoy the connection that you and I have, because I think we feel the same way. Like every time I step on that stage, I'm being blessed with the opportunity. And it's a privilege to spend time, whether it's an hour or 2 hours of people's time to hear what I have to say. And I'm passionate about that. I want to make sure that they are getting time well spent. So when it comes to Asher, it was really, I'm not any I'm not a person of the education, really. I'm not a great writer, but I prayed about this a lot. And I said, okay, it was 2019. We're seeing all these deaths. And now we see symposium, Perf is putting on a symposium at NYPD. And I said, we have to do something more. We can't just sit around and talk about these things anymore. And I prayed about this. And the Lord put something on my heart. And like 1 or 2 in the morning, I take that pad that we all have next to our beds, in case you get that call. And I took a pad and a pen. I went and sat at the kitchen table and I designed something called the Asher model. And it really is just a 7-point approach to creating a culture of wellness in your organization. And it's not, when you listen to it, you're like, okay, great. Well, I could have thought of that, or I could have, right. But no one was thinking about these things. And it's very easy to think about, right? It's creating the awareness, right? It's having a solution focused approach. It's all those things. And really what you're trying to do is be multifaceted and multi-targeted, and hopefully something will resonate with somebody, right? And here's the thing, if our efforts create one change of outcome and we save one life, then it's all worthwhile. And that's kind of the way I felt about it.
Police officer mental health is something that, we've been talking about for decades. But in the last 3.5 years, with this vilification and demonization of American police officers, our mental health has come more into focus as we see not just police officer suicides, but suicide. You and I were talking about this before we went on camera. The CDC just came out with the statistics for 2022. 50,000 suicides in the United States of America in 2022. That's a record number of just our people in America committing suicide. And police officers are no different, are they?
No, we're just a subset of the American public, right? So if the trend is trending up, then it makes sense that officers are going to trend up as well. It's not shocking to hear those things at all. Here's the difference that I always kind of put into perspective. 50,000, that's a number, but every single person there, it's a person, right? It's someone's mom, it's their dad, it's their family member, it's their light, it was their why, it was the reason why they were living, So we can't just just say these are just casualties. We have to say that each one of those people, particularly in law enforcement, when it's one of our brothers and sisters, they had a family, they had meaning to somebody. And we can't just write these off as numbers that we see on a graph. We have to do something. We have to be proactive, and we ought to be able to change outcomes. And that's why I'm so blessed to have this opportunity with you, Betsy, to talk about this.
You and I we were both 80s cops, right? That's when we were young guns. And we were told then, you don't really talk about stuff. You don't take it home. You don't share a lot with your family. You suck it up. You talk to other cops, usually at a bar. And that's how you deal with your mental health. And like you said at the beginning of the show, we've got to be able to change as law enforcement grows, as our clientele changes, as our officers change, as generations change. We have to change with it, and that don't take it home stuff is no longer the case, right?
Yeah, the whole suck it up buttercup. I mean, I hate that saying, but people still use it. And I know this is not going to shock you, but I was traveling a year ago, and I'm speaking on stage, and afterwards I kind of watched a gentleman in the back, and he was a sheriff in an agency. I won't say what agency. And he had his arms crossed the whole time and kind of just had this scour to him. So afterwards, I kind of did my thing, and I made my way over to him. I go, "This stuff doesn't resonate with you." He goes, "You know what, Chief? No disrespect." And then what happens, right? When someone says no disrespect, what's happening next? You get disrespected, right? And so he followed suit. And he goes, "But you know what? If my people aren't healthy enough to get in the car and do their job, they're no good to me." This is last year. So we still have leaders out there that don't get it. We still have leaders that are going off the militaristic, autocratic leadership that their people don't care and they don't matter. And that's what this needs to change. That's why we need to have a paradigm switch when it comes to leadership in this profession.
So explain the Asher model, if you can, in this short amount of time.
Yeah, it's a 7-point approach. And really, honestly, the 7 points match the Bay Area badge that we have. It was just a graphic, right? Police officers are very kinesthetic, right? So you have to have something to match. I was thinking about a pop-up book, but, obviously that wouldn't work. That would help us because we're pretty simple people. But it really was just based on that badge. And it was, creating the environment, right? Raising awareness, right? Taking those conversations out of the shadows and into the open. And then, everybody says the whole thing that it's okay not to be okay. It's kind of a buzzword now, but we can't just leave it there. We have to do something to make it okay and be proactive. So number 2 is a proactive solution. What is that going to look like? And for every agency is different, but as long as we're being proactive, because this profession is so reactive in everything we do. Look at, if we were a business, we'd be out of business, right? Mm-hmm. We're behind the times in leadership, probably 10 years than some of these businesses. In some of our technology, we're behind. Almost everything we do is reactive when it comes to policing. So number 2, proactive solutions. 3 is having a peer support team, creating a peer support team that people can trust and believe in, that they're not going to get reports back that go to command staff, and that people can just reach out and tell people that I need help, right? 4 is resiliency. And I think we'll talk a little bit about resiliency, but resiliency, proactive resiliency. Oh, what does that mean? I did a little study before we came on and said the American Psychological Association defined resiliency as this: adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant source of stress. Well, we do that every day. That's what we do every single day.
You
right?
Just described police work.
Right, exactly. So what does that mean, proactive? We continue to wait and do the debriefings, right? The debriefings. We're not doing briefings when it comes to resiliency. That's where the paradigm switch needs to be talked about. We have to have this holistic approach of creating a culture of wellness where we talk about self-care practices, mindfulness, yoga, and that's something that I kind of call the 6 fitnesses. And it's a lot of things to say, and sometimes spit comes out of your mouth, but it still works. Physical fitness, right? Nutritional fitness, financial fitness, spiritual fitness, family fitness, and of course, mental fitness. When we could put all those together and we could be proactive in those spaces, I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of change, and we're going to see some change outcomes in our profession. And I think it's really important. So number 5 is healthy habits, which kind of makes sense, right? Let's eat healthy. We come into this profession, we're the most mentally fit and physically fit we ever see, right? And over the course of time, somehow, the gremlin gets into our closet and takes in our inseams, or our wives, or, for me, my starter spouse, they go in and they throw your Class A in the dryer, because there's no way I'm getting fat, right? It's just that the clothes are getting smaller. But anyway, so we got to eat right. We got to be healthy. We know that in our brain, but we don't practice that. So it's really important to make that at the forefront. 6 in my model was spiritual wellness. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with that, and depending on where you're at. And some people, have they're spiritual. Some people are people of faith, and wherever you're at, but just having that idea that something greater than ourselves is out there is really, really important to understand. And it's actually holistically, it helps you, and actually breeds health into your body. And then number 7 is family, which gets lost so many times in this profession. We have to have resources from, rookie to retirement, I'll say. We talk about financial fitness. When people come into this profession, when we're 20 something, we have no idea how to manage money, right? And then, before you retire, 5 years out, what's our purpose? What's your sense of purpose going to be when you retire? Because we're losing far too many people to suicide when they retire. So who's doing that work? We have to find a sense of purpose for our employees that are about to leave this profession. Because here's the biggest lie that we were told when we came through the academies, right? In the 80s, you are a police officer. Now, here's the thing. Let's be honest. That's not who you are. That's what you do for a living. And don't get me wrong, we're very proud of that, and we're very dedicated to that. But that's not who you are. And that's why people are having such a hard time disconnecting when they retire, because they're no longer a police officer. And I think they lose their sense of purpose. Let's build their sense of purpose. Let's talk about their why. So when they leave this profession, they realize that they still have life and they still have purpose behind that. So those are the 7 principles of the model. It's fairly simple, but it works, and it's holistic, and it gives people an opportunity to create a culture of wellness, as opposed to these poor leaders that are creating wellness programs that are just checks boxes that no one trusts and no one believes in.
That is so incredibly well said. And we do see a lot of that around this country, and especially at a time where 9 out of every 10 police departments are short-staffed, we can't bring enough people to this profession. When you and I got hired, we had to compete with the hundreds, if not thousands of people to get, a few positions. And now for 25 open positions, you might have 3 people show up to take the test. As a police leader, what do you think we need to do to make this profession attractive again?
I'm not sure we have to make it attractive again. Here's one thing, and I'll quote Gordon Graham. He said this. He said, our recruitment pool in this profession is turned into a puddle. And it's so accurate. But here's a paradigm switch, and I want to get your thoughts on this for a minute. I don't think we have a recruitment problem. I think we have a retention problem. I think when we spend $75,000, and this is a true statement, $75,000 for an agency out in California to bring you on to be a member of our organization, but we don't take care of the people in the organization, that's a problem. That's a problem. So we have to think about that. So the best answer for recruitment is a solid retention program. And I'll stay on that. And I think that's a leadership issue.
I think I agree with you on that, because we've got people that are bailing out before they can even collect retirement, that they're just walking away. And that is an absolute travesty, because it's not easy to become a police officer. And once you become a police officer, you're right. We got to work so much harder to keep you. Chief, we've got about 4 minutes left. Talk about what true resiliency really is, because that word gets thrown around a lot, and I think it gets abused and misused. What do you believe true resiliency is?
Yeah, I think if you go right back to that definition, it's about proactive resiliency, right? And it's building that holistic approach of creating that culture of wellness, right? Self-care practices. We want people to be resilient on their own and build resiliency, not wait for a program or a training or an event to cause that to happen, right? So we talked about the fitnesses, be physically fit, know how to eat right, right? Financial fitness, all those things. And then something that I really think is important is that gratitude meditation or practice. We have a lot to be grateful for. But we lose sight of that. But I think there has to be a leader in your organization that brings you back there when all these things are going chaotic around you. Let's talk about the things that we're grateful for. We're grateful for this job. We're grateful for the blessing to be a police officer and to be able to serve our community. Those are blessings. Those are things that we had to be really grateful for, but it takes people to kind of bring us back into that purpose at times. And then again, finding a sense of purpose in this profession. When you said we attract people into this and bring us back to this profession, I think it's still there. What it is, it's breaking away from the traditions, expecting people to come into our profession. It's us having to change that and go out and look for people and understanding the Gen Zs. And maybe at another time we can come back and talk about that. But we have to understand the Gen Z workforce is coming into us. They're not looking for that thin blue line. They're not looking for the SWAT deployments. They want a sense of purpose. They want to know that their work matters. They want to know that they're going to be able to have work-life balance, right? And they also want to know
that's what I appreciate about Gen Z. They want to have a life.
Yeah, they want to have a life.
Think about that when we were young cops.
Right? And they want to have a sense of purpose, and they want to know that the voice is heard, and they want to know that their work matters. It's fairly simple, but we're so afraid to get away from our traditions and break away that we don't need to change. Well, here's a message for everybody out there. We need to change.
Chief, where can people find you?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach out to me is I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media person, so I don't have a Facebook or Instagram at this time, but I'm on LinkedIn. And at the end, if you want, you could share my email address and my personal cell phone number. I'm always going to say that I'm here for you. And if you need anything at all, I'm available for you 24/7, 365.
Chief Neil Gang, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Ma'am, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.